on the legal profession. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to join me in another round of a warm applause for the Right Honourable, the Chief Justice of Malaysia.
His Royal Highness, Yang di-Pertuan Besar Negeri Sembilan, Tuanku Muhriz Ibni Almarhum Tuanku Munawir, Royal Highness, Tunku Ampuan Besar Negeri Sembilan, Tuanku Aisyah Rohani binti Almarhum Tengku Besar Mahmud, The Honourable Datuk Seri Anwar bin Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia, His Highness Tengku Besar Seri Menanti Tengku Ali Ritaudin Ibni Tuanku Muhriz, His Highness Tengku Zain Abidin Ibni Tuanku Muhriz, The Right Honourable Tan Sri Datuk Amar Abang Iskandar bin Abang Hashim, President of the Court of Appeal, Yang Berhormat, Yang Arif, Judges of the Federal Court, Court of Appeal, High Court and Judicial Commissioners, Presidents of the Malaysian Bar, members of the IMLC Organising Committee 2023, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. I am honored and privileged to be invited to deliver the opening address on the occasion of the International Malaysia Law Conference 2023. I would like to thank Ms. Karen Chia, President of the Malaysian Bar, for inviting me to deliver this speech and for continuing to include the Malaysian judiciary. The theme assigned to me in particular is in the context of exploring the future of the judiciary with technology. Exploring the future is apt, seeing that so much has changed in the past 3 years alone that we hope to achieve several years down the pipeline, especially when it comes to technological advancements. In 1996, Professor Richard Susskind, in his seminal work, The Future of Law, envisioned us ushering in an era of advanced technology, one in which the predominant method of communication is electronic mail. He made this assertion in a time when the legal fraternity was still deeply entrenched in a conservative legal system that was firmly rooted in manual and paper-based transactions. 27 years later, not only is email so integral, not just to the Malaysian judiciary, as the preferred form of communication and case management method, but to the world's economic sector. The commonly cited sign-off, please consider the environment before printing this email, is proof of this digital transformation that paper-based transactions are seriously shunned. Senior advocates, when they were once juniors carrying stacks of MLJ reports for their pupil masters or seniors, now instruct their associates or pupils to prepare digital bundles and even have them highlighted digitally. Lawyers and judges also have the entire libraries at their disposal in a single portable device, such as a laptop. From bulky books to bulky laptops to now sleek handheld devices, the very elements of the profession's tools have evolved in their form and shape entirely. Courtrooms of today are indeed the culmination of an extensive and methodical digitalization process strategically implemented in successive phases over the years. The courtroom's transformation reflects the broader digital revolution underway in society. Just as bricks and stones built the courtrooms of yesteryears, wires, cables, and the internet are building the courtrooms of today. The Malaysian judiciary stands as a testament to this evolution, having embarked on its transformative journey towards digitalization as early as 2009, which was spurred by my predecessor, Chief Justice Tun Zaki bin Tun Azmi. With the advent of modern technology, the geographical limitations that once dictated the functioning of judiciary are gradually eroding. In this digital age, justice can be dispensed over miles and across borders, making the courtroom a more accessible, egalitarian, and inclusive space. The physical presence of all parties in the courtroom is no longer a prerequisite for the dispensation of justice. Video conferencing tools have made it possible for defendants, plaintiffs, attorneys, witnesses, and even judges to attend hearings remotely. Though not always recommended, in extreme cases, witnesses may give testimony from their homes, offices, or some cases, their cars, and even from different time zones. The nature of disputes being brought before the courts today is also increasingly influenced by the advancements in technology. Consequently, the judicial system is now and will increasingly be called upon to address novel and complex legal issues stemming from emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, blockchain, and cryptocurrencies. These technological innovations have already given rise to numerous legal disputes, with many more anticipated in the coming decades. As society becomes more interconnected and dependent on technology, our vulnerability to cyber attacks has increased, resulting in a limitless array of cyber threats. As such, courts are now tasked with navigating and resolving an expanding range of cybercrimes offenses as well. Access to justice and court technology are two interconnected aspects of the legal system that can significantly impact the administration of justice. The intersection between access to justice and court technology is evident in various ways. Technology enhances efficiency by automating processes, digitalizing documents, and simplifying case tracking, leading to a quicker resolution of cases. Technology improves accessibility by enabling virtual hearings via video conferencing, which bridges the gap for individuals in remote areas and those facing mobility challenges. Costs are also reduced through online filing systems, which minimize physical paperwork and expenses associated with document delivery. Additionally, court technology simplifies procedures for self-represented litigants, providing user-friendly interfaces and guidance, thereby promoting equal access to justice. Technology also facilitates data-driven decision-making by collecting and analyzing data to identify areas that lack access to justice, which in turn helps policymakers allocate resources effectively and develop targeted interventions. At the early stages of our endeavor to digitalize our courts, I must admit that there was reluctance on the part of many, and criticisms shortly ensued. To my mind, the test to be adopted in ascertaining whether justice is jeopardized is analyzing whether the introduction of any changes would endanger the core elements of administration of justice, namely uniformity, certainty, impartiality, and equality as envisaged under the rule of law. At the end of it all, what matters most is that access to justice in the virtual realm conforms to the indicia of open justice, compliance with the rules of natural justice, an independent legal profession, and an independent judiciary. Allow me to highlight some of the technology-driven endeavors undertaken by the Malaysian judiciary to date. In this regard, one prominent achievement is our full transition towards a paperless system as part of the Going Green initiative, where manual court processes have been digitalized and integrated under the e-court system, as exemplified by the implementation of a centralized e-filing system, case management system, and queue management system. This has been a progressive step that has not only enhanced efficiency, but has also advanced our collective commitment to environmental sustainability. With the legislature's expeditious contribution, online hearings have been legislatively endorsed in the newly inserted Section 15A of the Courts of Judicature Act 1964 and Section 101B of the Subordinate Courts Act 1948 for the superior and the subordinate courts, respectively. Before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the judiciary had slowly introduced virtual court proceedings comprising online case management and hearings in the superior courts via video conferencing. The progress was accelerated during the COVID-19 crisis, where the judiciary took the lead and swiftly adapted to the changing circumstances. Meanwhile, criminal trials and appeals are still conducted in person, guaranteeing a just and transparent dispensation of justice, as well as the right to a fair trial to the accused. The Malaysian judiciary remains firmly committed to Goal 16 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, that encourage promoting peaceful and inclusive societies, providing access to justice for all, and building effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. In this regard, our court systems, for example, e-bail and e-auction, minimize bureaucracy and intervention by unscrupulous third parties and uniformize court practices nationwide. All are treated equally through an open and accessible process. The EPG system that regulates guilty pleas for certain limited offences and the reliance on artificial intelligence AI in sentencing, in my view, also epitomizes Articles 5 and 8 of the Federal Constitution, in that they respectively minimize the need to come to court to settle otherwise routine offences and ensure uniformity in sentencing. All persons, regardless of who they are treated fairly and the same as any other person similarly situated. On the topic of AI, one report suggests that while the AI industry was worth USD 65.25 billion in 2022, it is projected to grow an astounding USD 1.8 trillion by 2032. In light of the excitement and possible opportunities in the recent introduction of the much-lauded ChatGPT and its competitor Google Bard, and upon witnessing what AI is capable of, I am not surprised at the projected surge in growth. In fact, many have reported that ChatGPT, which is still in testing stages, can write reasonable template letters of demand and emails. The next time I receive a letter requesting to adjourn a federal court hearing, I will not be astonished that it was authored by AI. Perhaps I should consider giving AI replies a shot myself. In 2020, we witnessed a notable milestone in the state of Sabah. In February 2020, AI sentencing was implemented in the first magistrate court case of Dennis P. Modili against public prosecutor on possession of dangerous drugs. As announced by the then Chief Judge of Sabah and Sarawak, Tan Sri David Wong Dakwa, this landmark development was the first in Asia where the court utilized an AI sentencing recommendation premised on the sentencing trend extrapolated from the past data. 20 offences are incorporated into the AI sentencing mechanism, encompassing offences in the Penal Code, the Dangerous Drugs Act 1952, and the Road Transport Act 1987. We hope to expand the subject area coverage of the AI system in the near future. On this note, I would like to reiterate that AI sentencing, arguably a form of predictive or forecast justice, should not be devoid of human consideration. The underlying idea is to supplement and not to supplant the role of human judges. The transformation of courtrooms from physical to virtual is not without its challenges. Cybersecurity is a paramount concern. Sensitive legal data, from personal testimonies to case details, must be protected. In the same way that physical courtrooms are secured by locks and guards, digital courtrooms require robust firewalls and encryption to protect the integrity of proceedings. In the past year, even the judiciary was targeted by certain members of society in pursuit of their ill-willed objectives. The leaked draft judgments in 2 high-profile cases being heard in the Federal Court and the High Court were nothing more than wicked attempts to undermine the judiciary, calculated at disrupting judicial operations and the administration of justice. In this regard, the Malaysian judiciary will continue to enhance its cybersecurity measures with a view to continuously preserving the confidentiality and integrity of our judicial processes. The dawn of the technological era imposes novel challenges upon those of us on the bench, particularly with the proliferation of social media and the internet. Our judgments undergo public discourse, we ourselves are scrutinized, and to speak candidly, even our private lives are not immune from such scrutiny. On our part, we harbor a preference for well-informed critique as opposed to baseless criticism. Our earnest hope is for members of the public who may be uninformed to harness the power of technology in order to acquaint themselves with our judicial decisions. A judgment or decision must be understood not only for what it decides, but also for the reasons that support them. Perhaps the bar should look into improving greater public literacy and understanding of judicial decisions. Another foreseeable challenge has to do with the kind of disputes confronting our courts. With the emergence of disruptive technology, judges are increasingly encountering novel technological evidence coming into the courtrooms, whether it be social media evidence, forensic DNA, etc. As such, judges will have no choice but to acquire knowledge about the new technologies that underpin novel legal claims and defenses, new types of technological evidence, the systemic changes to the courtroom and the judicial process that are driven by technological advancements. Additionally, there is a digital divide that cannot be overlooked. For people with limited access to technology or low digital literacy, the shift can be intimidating and exclusionary. To them, technology can sometimes even be elusive. In this sense, technology must not impede access to justice for those who do not have the same resources to access the courts. As one of the core public institutions, the judiciary plays a vital role in pioneering the judicious adoption and implementation of technology within the sphere of law and legal practice. This should be approached with a distinctive emphasis on problem solving, paving the way for prompt, affordable, and equitable resolution of disputes. The integration of technology within judicial systems undeniably holds immense potential as the courts will continue to embrace significant emerging technologies. Nevertheless, it is crucial to temper our enthusiasm for technological advancements with the acknowledgement that courts deal with a diverse range of cases. Cases not only vary in their complexity, but the nature of the issues. Hence, the suitability of specific technologies may differ remarkably. Different cases necessitate different degrees of flexibility, which must be accommodated even within a technologically advanced environment. This should not be misinterpreted as a regression against the onward march towards complete digitalization. What it merely means is that the shift from the traditional mode to digital must be tactfully balanced and executed at a pace that makes relevant parties feel at ease. It is a matter of harmonizing the old with the new and the human with the digital to ensure justice remains accessible, fair, and meaningful in an increasingly digital world. Further, a crucial component of this innovation and adaptation process is the effective dissemination of information, particularly in relation to the services we provide. Our stakeholders and the general public should be well informed about these services and their benefits. It is only through consistent, clear, and wide-reaching communication that we can ensure our services achieve their intended impact. Inclusivity and accessibility is the key tenet in all our endeavors. In a nutshell, the future of the judiciary with technology is not merely about casual deployment of digitalization, but instead, it involves a conscientious adaptation of the technology, which is contingent on the nature of cases and based on the pillars of justice and equity. To conclude, I am pleased to note the topics that this conference highlights, and it is my hope that the discussions on the various topics continue to move our justice system in the right direction. I would close by extending once again my deepest appreciation to the organizers for according me the opportunity to deliver the opening speech. It is an honor and a privilege instead. Thank you, and I wish you a fruitful conference.
Thank you, Tun Tengku Maimun. Such an inspiring opening address, getting everyone to adapt to technology, which the courts have also considered sustainability. The shift to technology is inevitable as everyone navigate the present to explore the future. Your Royal Highnesses, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the IMLC 2023 is honored with the presence of His Highness Tunku Zain Al Abidin Ibni Tuanku Muhriz to deliver the special address. May I invite His Highness Tunku Zain to go on stage. His Highness Tunku Zain Al Abidin is a respected advocate for constitutionalism and good governance. He was an invited speaker at the 3rd Raja Adris Memorial Lecture in 2014 in conjunction with the IMLC 2014. His Highness Tunku Zain Al Abidin's deep insights and wealth of knowledge will provide us with valuable perspective as we navigate the themes and discussions of today's conference. Please join me in giving another warm round of applause.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Menghadap Paduka Seri Ayahanda Duli Yang Maha Mulia Yang di-Pertuan Besar Negeri Sembilan, Tuanku Muhriz Ibni Almarhum Tuanku Munawir. Menghadap Paduka Seri Bonda Duli Yang Maha Mulia Tunku Ampan Besar Negeri Sembilan, Tuanku Aisyah Rohani binti Almarhum Tunku Besar Mahmud. Ampun Tuanku, Paduka anak anda menjunjung kasih, Paduka Seri Ayahanda dan Bonda berdua berangkat mencemaduli keucapan Paduka anak anda di Persidangan Undang-Undang Malaysia Antarabangsa pada pagi ini. Paduka anak anda mohon sembah untuk mengalu-alukan dif-dif yang lain dan seterusnya berucap dalam bahasa Inggeris. Menjunjung kasih Tuanku. Yang amat berhormat Perdana Menteri Malaysia Datuk Seri Anwar bin Ibrahim, Paduka Kekanda Yang Amat Mulia Tunku Besar Seri Menanti, Tunku Ali Redawadin Ibni Tuanku Muhriz, Yang Amat Arif Ketua Hakim Tunku Maimun bin Tuan Mat, Yang Amat Arif Tan Sri Datuk Abang Iskandar bin Abang Hashim, President of the Court of Appeal, Yang Berhormat Siang Arif, President of the Malaysian Bar, Karen Chia, members of the IMLC Organising Committee, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege to be here. I thank the legal fraternity and the President of the Malaysian Bar, Karen Chia in particular, for inviting this non-lawyer to IMLC for a third time to address such distinguished guests. What does one say for 10 minutes between the Chief Justice and the Prime Minister of Malaysia? For some of our history, the head of the judiciary and the head of the government did not enjoy a good relationship. Hang the judges was allegedly a mantra of one former Prime Minister. Those were dark days for our democracy, which had far-reaching consequences on our country for decades to come. We are dealing with those consequences in many guises today, as weakened institutions have enabled corruption and a culture of patronage to take root, its participants and beneficiaries now obviously resisting any attempts at reform. Yet it is still symbolic of the healing that has taken place that today both can speak in the same morning. And it hasn't happened often. In 1979 and in 2012, when the Prime Minister was present at the Malaysia Law Conference, or the IMLC. Today, the CJ and PMX are separated only by me, speaking in a civil society capacity. Now, as I mentioned in the inaugural Parliamentary Speakers Lecture Series a couple of years ago, the biggest and most durable change in Malaysian democratic life in the last decade has been the growth of civil society. The Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs, IDEAS, is today 12 years old. But so many other organizations, some older than us, most younger than us, have mushroomed and become familiar contributors to the process of policymaking. One particular phenomenon that I've noticed, especially during the period of political frog hopping, is that new ministers are very keen to engage with us and civil society. If I were cynical, I would say it's because they know they have little legitimacy. So, involving NGOs and think tanks is a good way to show consultation and inclusion. But more importantly, it's because the capacity and track record of civil society organizations continues to build. The Rakyat increasingly sees civil society as a reliable interface between government and people that distills the best research and policy proposals towards reform. Indeed, IDEAS and our partners and competitors now work with the best academics from inside and outside Malaysia, with researchers and practitioners in ever more niche fields, the diplomatic community, and international organizations, while always paying foremost attention to the needs of targeted beneficiaries, whether they are Orang Asli children seeking a better education, B40 families struggling amidst the cost of living crisis, or young Malaysians yearning for job opportunities. While policy research across all sectors, from education, health, the economy, the environment, and climate change, housing, tax, trade, are the bread and butter of most think tanks, with some specializing in particular areas, the legitimacy and efficacy of all these efforts ultimately relies on some key fundamentals. And two of these are the federal constitution and the independence of institutions. I salute the Chief Justice for being guided by, adhering to, and making profoundly sensible interpretations from the Federal Constitution. Her judgments and speeches show that our Constitution is still valid and workable in our multiracial, multi-religious, and multicultural country. In particular, as Muslim countries all around the world face domestic and international pressure for reflection and change, we should be grateful that our federal constitution is able to accommodate the religious traditions of citizens, uphold traditional institutions such as our constitutional monarchy, alongside modern concepts of parliamentary democracy. Although, as I have argued before, we can find democratic antecedents in the Hukum Kanun Melaka, the Batu Bersurat Terengganu, and the Adat Perpatih of Negeri Sembilan. In these classical Muslim polities, we find constitutional limits of authority, separation of powers, decentralization, and the rule of law. We see respect for human dignity, we see free trade being celebrated, and we see good governance being praised. Today, of course, there are other specific innovations that need to be reconciled. In her speech, Tunku Maimun spoke about the goal of integrating technology, in particular artificial intelligence, in amplifying access to justice. Now, while it is of course the right of any citizen to imagine an alternate vision for our country, I do find it sad that some people so loathe our constitutional arrangements to the extent of advocating some sort of a theocratic or socialist revolution instead. I've long advocated for a much better teaching of civic education in our schools so that every Malaysian understands how important our constitution is, why we have institutions such as Parliament, how the Dewan Rakyat is composed, why we have the Conference of Rulers, how elections work, what powers the police have, and why the Anti-Corruption Commission should be truly independent. As precarious moments during the COVID-19 pandemic and intense political prostitution showed, the constitutional monarchy can be a most crucial check and balance. Indeed, a number of diplomats told me that if not for the role played by the king after the last general election, we might not even have had a government based on the experience of other countries. Having said that, of course, not every institution should depend on the hereditary principle. The writers of the Federal Constitution took careful consideration in designing how to appoint senior judges and heads of commissions. And this spirit should continue today in the appointments of statutory bodies and even government-linked companies, if indeed we are to continue having so many GLCs. I would highlight in particular that public confidence should be maximized as much as possible when it comes to offices such as commissions of the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, Election Commission, and Human Rights Commission, as well as senior postings in the civil service, police force, and armed forces. At the same time, my colleagues and I at Ideas applaud the institutional reforms that have occurred in Parliament in recent years. Most significant among them is the creation of parliamentary select committees and all-party parliamentary groups. These are truly groundbreaking in enabling backbench MPs and senators to have a greater role in considering, formulating, and evaluating policy. Indeed, we have interacted with politicians on both sides who take their new portfolios very seriously and contribute to the debate quite apart from what their party leaders tell them. In the Malaysian context, this truly is a major step forward towards representative democracy. PSCs and APPGs are a crucial conduit for civil society, academicians, and activists to interact with elected representatives. Here it might seem apt to recall the words of the first Yang di-Pertuan Agong, a barrister, who was also the grandfather of my father, the present Yang di-Pertuan Besar of Negeri Sembilan. Addressing the first ever session of the Parliament of the Federation of Malaya in 1959, he urged MPs to conduct your affairs in a way that Parliament will be a shining beacon of democracy at its brightest and best. And I hope all MPs continue to take this urging seriously. The Prime Minister, for his part, has committed to further reforms with regard to the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, whistleblower protection, separating the roles of the Attorney General and Public Prosecutor, and judicial appointments. To further encourage his fulfillment of these commitments, shall we give him a rousing round of applause? I believe it is with these fundamentals in place, respect for the Constitution and the independence of institutions, that all other policy-making and execution can happen in the best circumstances. This is because all stakeholders and the public at large will understand how and why policies are made and how much consultation there is. And once such policies are implemented, checks and balances can monitor and comment on their progress. And a crucial comment of the latter is, of course, a free press. I look forward to the establishment of the promised Malaysian Media Council. And at the same time, I remind my activist friends that some degree of regulation, especially on social media, is reasonable in this day and age. For we have seen the devastating impact of provocations of violence in democracies around the world. It will always be difficult to draw the line between security and liberty, but that is why eternal vigilance is the price we pay. We can see what happens sometimes when the policies are not well thought through. My colleagues and I, advocating for children's and refugee rights, are very pleased with the promised amendment to allow citizenship for children born overseas to Malaysian mothers married to non-Malaysian fathers. However, we are profoundly disappointed by other amendments, specifically the removal of Section 1E of Part 2 of the Second Schedule of the Federal Constitution, that would severely exacerbate the issue of statelessness among children. After pressure from civil society, former ministers, and now even among the cabinet, I am hopeful that this appalling proposal is eradicated so that Malaysia can uphold its responsibilities according to the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child, which the government ratified in 1995. Ampun Tuanku, Prime Minister and honorable guests, let us be real. State elections are coming up, right? Whatever the results, there will always be continued politicking. Almost nothing one says or does is immune to political condemnation. Provocateurs will always find a way to manipulate something. And in this social media age, we must find the confidence and resilience to defend what our predecessors worked so hard to build. It is incumbent on all of us to respect, treasure, and understand the intentions of our founding fathers. We are still a young country, but I believe that if the words of the Federal Constitution, the spirit of Merdeka, and indeed the spirit of the formation of Malaysia prevail, then we will last and thrive for many generations to come. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamu alaikum warahmatullahi. Thank you very much.
Thank you, His Highness Tunku Zain, for an enlightening speech underscoring the importance of upholding justice and liberty in Malaysia. It is both an honor and a privilege for us to hear firsthand His Highness's wisdom, enveloped and delivered with such eloquence. Your Royal Highnesses, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the next part of the ceremony, and that is the keynote address by the Honorable Datuk Seri Anwar bin Ibrahim, the Prime Minister of Malaysia. At this juncture, we would like to invite Mr. Christopher Leong, past President of the Malaysian Bar, to the stage, please. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Christopher Leong is an influential figure in the legal profession and was the 30th President of the Malaysian Bar from 2013 to 2015. Mr. Leong is known for his dedication to upholding the principles of justice and the rule of law. Notably, he led the Walk for Peace and Freedom in 2014 to abolish the Sedition Act 1948. Mr. Leong has been involved with previous IMLCs, and it is our pleasure to have him with us again today. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Mr. Leong to the stage.
Thank you very much for that very generous introduction. His Royal Highness Yang di-Pertuan Besar Negeri Sembilan, Tuanku Muris Ibni Almarhum Tuanku Munawir, Her Royal Highness Tunku Ampuan Besar Negeri Sembilan, Tuanku Aisyah Rohani binti Almarhum Tunku Besar Mahmud, Yang amat berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar bin Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia, Yang amat mulia Tunku Besar Seri Menanti Tunku Ali Ritaudin Ibni Tuanku Muris, Yang amat mulia Tunku Zain Al-Abidin Ibni Tuanku Muris, Yang amat arif Tun Tengku Maimun binti Tuan Mat, Chief Justice of the Federal Court Malaysia, Yang amat arif Tan Sri Datuk Amar Abang Iskandar bin Abang Hashim, President of the Court of Appeal Malaysia, Yang Arif, judges of the Federal Court, Court of Appeal, High Court, and Judicial Commissioners, honorable ministers, deputy ministers, your excellencies, high commissioners and ambassadors, our very own president of the Malaysian Bar, Ms. Karen Chia, co-chairpersons and deputy chairpersons of the IMLC 2023 Organizing Committee, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to all of you and welcome to this opening segment of the International Malaysia Law Conference 2023 with the team navigating the present, exploring the future. It is my honor and pleasure to be the moderator of this session and to introduce our eminent keynote speaker, Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, Prime Minister of Malaysia. Most of us already know much about Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, in particular, his political journey, which started in 1982, his trials and tribulations, both metaphorically and in actuality, bringing him along the way onto this stage this morning to be with us. My task is therefore rendered easier and would be obliged if you would kindly bear with me as I undertake the needful formalities, perhaps with a tinge from the bar's perspective. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim was born, Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has variously over the years been described as an activist, firebrand, intellectual, Islamic scholar, a maverick, charismatic. CNN reported him being credited as an economic wizard, much needed today in Malaysia. He was named top 4 finance minister by Euromoney and finance minister of the year by Asia Money magazines in 1996 and Asian of the year in 1998 by Newsweek magazine. He is, however, best known by us and many by the epithet reformist. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim was born in Chorok Tokun, Bukit Mertajam, Penang on 10th August 1947. He therefore turns 76 years old come next month. A smidge older than the immediate past Prime Minister, is the same age as the Prime Minister before that, and a sprightly young man compared to whom some refer to as the grand old man. I don't know whether Brian, the US ambassador, is here, and I'm not referring to Joe Biden. I'm also told that this month saw the birthdays of Yang Amat Arif, Tun Tunku Maimun, as well on the 2nd of July, as well as Yang Amat Mulia Tunku Zain Abidin on the 6th of July. So on behalf of everybody, I wish Chief Justice Tunku Zain happy birthday, and happy birthday in advance to our Prime Minister. Datuk Seri Anwar attended secondary school at College Melayu Kuala Kangsar, or referred to as MCKK, from 1960 to 66, graduated from University of Malaya in 71 with a bachelor's degree in Malay Studies. He then founded and led, for about 10 to 11 years, the Muslim Youth Movement of Malaysia, ABIM, a frequent critic of the government. In fact, he became such an accomplished thorn to the then government that he was recruited into UMNO and the government in 1982. Datuk Seri Anwar's rise and progression in politics was, as we know, meteoric. He was appointed the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture in 83, a position and portfolio presently held by YB Hannah Yeo, who will be speaking at a session tomorrow at 3:15 p.m. He was the Education Minister from 86 to 91, Minister of Finance from 91 to 98, and Deputy Prime Minister from 93 to 98. That meteoric rise, however, came crashing down with seismic effect in 98. Datuk Seri Anwar was removed as the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister on 2nd September 1998 in the midst of the Asian financial crisis and in the midst of disagreements between him and the then Prime Minister infamous and draconian Internal Security Act without being given access to his lawyers and family. He emerged in court to be charged on 29 September 98, bruised and battered, brandishing the famous or infamous black eye. Many of those of my vintage will recall the shock, anger, and outrage of many Malaysians. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim was charged for offences under Section 377A and B of the Penal Code and under the Emergency Essential Powers Ordinance No. 22 of 1970. Datuk Seri Anwar has always maintained that the criminal charges against him were politically motivated, a political conspiracy to remove him. However, it was reported at the time that his counsels were not permitted at his trial to cross-examine witnesses on issues pertaining to his removal as Deputy Prime Minister as well as Finance Minister, so as to establish his defense of conspiracy. He was convicted of the said charges, sentenced to 9 years and 6 years terms of imprisonment respectively. The Malaysian Bar, via its then President and Vice President Datuk Cyrus Das and R.R. Chalvaraja respectively, issued public statements deploring the use of the draconian ISA, the manner of his arrest, condemned the utter lawlessness of the battery and assault in police custody, and issues arising in the course of his trial. The Bar had convened an EGM on the 10th of October 98 and passed a resolution calling for the establishment of an independent commission of inquiry into the assault of Datuk Seri Anwar whilst in police custody to identify the offenders and for them to be prosecuted. The Malaysian Bar pushed its campaign over the ensuing months. The Commission of Inquiry was thus eventually established and commenced its inquiry in February of 1999. The then Inspector General of Police admitted to having assaulted Datuk Seri Anwar. The IGP was convicted and jailed. However, others involved were never brought to book. Reports of beatings and deaths in custody remain unabated. There are also instances of enforced disappearances, as found by Suhakam, of Malaysians who have been abducted by agents of the state, that is, the Special Branch, Bukit Aman, without a trace and not seen since. Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim completed his sentence in relation to the corruption conviction in April 2003 and significantly was released from prison in 2004 upon the federal court overturning his conviction for the sodomy charges. He was, however, not able to immediately return as a member of parliament due to a 5-year disqualification period as provided in the federal constitution. That period ended on 14th April 2008, just after the 12th general elections, which was held on 8th March that year. The 12th general election is described by many as the watershed elections for Malaysia, where the ruling coalition in office since independence was denied its 2/3 majority, and PKR won the most seats in the Dewan Rakyat amongst the opposition parties. Shortly thereafter, in April 2008, the main opposition parties at the time, PKR, PAS, and DAP, formed Pakatan Rakyat. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim returned to Parliament via a by-election in Pematang Pau in August 2008 and was appointed the leader of the opposition in the Dewan Rakyat. However, Datuk Seri Anwar was again prosecuted with new charges for sodomy in that same month. He was acquitted after trial by the High Court in 2012, but the Court of Appeal overturned the acquittal in 2014 and sentenced him to 5 years imprisonment. The Federal Court affirmed the decision of the Court of Appeal in 2015. Once again, the Malaysian Bar had issued statements querying whether it was a prosecution or persecution, and in any event, highlighting that Datuk Seri Anwar was being charged under an outmoded law for a victimless crime. That is, he was charged under Section 377 capital A and B of the Penal Code and was not charged pursuant to Section 377C, which provides for the offense of carnal intercourse against the order of nature without the consent or against the will of the other person. In the course of the trial and appeals of the second sodomy prosecution, GE 13 in 2013 and GE 14 in 2018 were held. These successive general elections followed the trajectory of the 12th. That is, the 13th GE saw the opposition Pakatan Rakyat, led by Datuk Seri Anwar, winning the popular vote for the first time in Malaysian electoral history, and the 14th GE saw the ruling coalition defeated at the polls, ushering in a new Pakatan Harapan government with its electoral promises for reformation as per the Buku Harapan, rebuilding our nation, fulfilling our hopes, and the promise that Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim would be the Prime Minister after 2 years. Well, I suppose 2022 is after 2 years. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim was granted a full royal pardon on 16th May 2018, after the 14th general elections. Alas, much of these reform promises did not come to pass. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim was also effectively denied the prime ministership, and Malaysia went into a tailspin until GE15. Malaysians went to the GE15 polls in November 2022, resulting in yet a new historical event, a hung parliament. No single political party or pre-election coalition won an outright simple majority to form the new federal government. The Pakatan Harapan coalition, led by Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, obtained the most votes and was invited by the young Di-Pertuan Agong to make history by forming a unity government, another first for Malaysia. The idea of a unity government was actually canvassed in 2020 by a previous Prime Minister, but that did not gain traction. Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, on the other hand, had the ability to bring together disparate parties, has the trust and confidence reposed in him by the electorate and our institutions, and succeeded in forming the present Madani unity government. Prime Minister, sir, it has been a long track and journey for you, but you have persevered, been determined, and are here, our 10th Prime Minister of Malaysia. It would not be inaccurate to say that you have arrived at a difficult time for Malaysia and Malaysians. The present issues and challenges confronting you as Prime Minister are numerous. The Malaysian economy, inflation, looming recession, cost of living concerns, the weak ringgit, the nonsensical playing up of racial and religious sentiments, corruption, attempts at undermining the unity government, the need for institutional reforms, and the need to strengthen our democracy. All of these presently require your deft navigation, dedication, and resolution. Ladies and gentlemen, the events of 1998 and 1999 as recounted led to and saw the founding of the National Justice Party, or Parti Keadilan, the start of the Malaysian Reformasi movement, and the birth of a new Malaysian consciousness and conscience, premised on the fight to create a just and virtuous nation that upholds the ideals of the separation of powers, the rule of law, and good governance. 1999 could perhaps be said to be the inflection point of our relatively nascent country. There were mass protests by, as well as mass arrests and mass trials in 98 and 99 of Reformasi Malaysians. The Malaysian Bar stepped in and established its rapid legal response team to provide pro bono legal representation at the police stations and lockups, as well as in court, to the masses of ordinary Malaysians who were arrested and prosecuted. Malaysians who had publicly rallied, Prime Minister, sir, to your Reformasi call, to your call for reforms. I have recounted some of the trials and tribulations of young Ahmad Berhormat, not for the purposes of opening old wounds, but rather to take lessons from the scars, that we recall and keep in mind the many reformation promises and initiatives that continue to be needed today, so that in the words of the Harapan GE15 Action Plan, Malaysia can be rebuilt from the rubble of devastation. I believe that the aforesaid events have in the last quarter century been significant, if not instrumental in shaping the evolution of Malaysian politics, and more pertinently, the cause and struggle for legal and institutional reforms. The trials and tribulations of one man, the Prime Minister, of one Malaysian, became the trials and tribulations of several generations of Malaysians and enacted the movement and fervor for positive change. Yang Amat Berhormat Prime Minister, it would not be an exaggeration to say many Malaysians, and I'm not referring to politicians, to ordinary Malaysians, they have joined you on your long journey till today, have been inspired by a cause to inspire for a better Malaysia, to believe that we as a people of a nation founded on the principles of justice, liberty, and equity are deserving to have our place under the sun. Yang Amat Berhormat, I am reminded at this moment of the aspirational battle cry of generations of Malaysians, past and present, a cry which is symbolized by you, and which cry will continue to resound until a better Malaysia is made. Reformasi, Prime Minister, sir. And thus, the Legion asks, what now, Prime Minister? What does the future hold? The Malaysian Bar stands ready to be of service in accordance with our statutory role in navigating the present and exploring the future. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Yang Amat Berhormat Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim, a Malaysian leader, a long time coming.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan salam sejahtera. Julai Yang Maha Mulia Yang di-Pertuan Besar Negeri Sembilan, Tuanku Mukris bin Almarhum Tuanku Munawir, Julai Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku Ampun Besar Negeri Sembilan, Tuanku Aisyah Rohani binti Almarhum Tuanku Besar Mahmud, Yang Maha Mulia Tuanku Besar Seri Menanti Tuanku Ali Daudin, Yang Maha Arif Tuanku Maimun, tinggal tadi Tunku Zainal Abidin, Amat Arif Tunku Tunku Maimun, Tuan Mat, Yang Amat Arif Tan Sri Datuk Amat Abang Iskandar, Yang Amat Mulia Tunku Zainal Abidin saya dah sebut tadi, Tan Sri Datuk Abang Iskandar, dan tetamu kehormat, rakan-rakan yang saya muliakan, rakan-rakan dari Majlis Peguam. Minta maaf, saya agak terharu sedikit dengan mengantar Chris Leong yang agak panjang. Tapi izinkan saya memulakan dengan menyatakan penghargaan khusus kepada tuanku yang berdua, kerana kehadiran tuanku itu memberi kesan yang berbeza kepada usaha kita jalankan reformasi perundangan, menegakkan hukum dalam negara yang masih tercabar dengan polemik dan naratif yang agak berbeza. Kita di sini, tuanku berdua dan Majlis Peguam, mau berbincang memperkukuh negara hukum, reformasi undang-undang. Tapi di luar sana, keadaan lebih besar. Kita diheret untuk berbicara soal kaum dan agama yang sempit. Dan ini tentunya menyukarkan. Sebab itu apa yang disebut oleh rakan-rakan tadi ada kaitan, tetapi harus kita masih tegas mempertahankan bahawa apapun yang berlaku dalam negara, dia tidak boleh menyimpang dari usaha kita menegak hukum, melakukan reformasi dan mengangkat martabat negara Malaysia ini sebagai negara demokratik yang patuh kepada hukum. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, time present and time past are both perhaps present in time future. and time future contained in time past. If all time is eternally present, all time is unredeemable. What might have been, what has been, point to one end, which is always present. Those are the words of T.S. Eliot, poet, critic, and philosopher, whose works are highly recommended, especially for those who spend substantial time in solitary confinement, whether voluntarily or sentenced by a court floor. I quote these immortal lines, of course, from the Four Quartets, Burnt and Norton, because they were the first to come to mind when I read the 5th edition of the International Malaysia Law Conference, carries the theme, Navigating the Present, Exploring the Future. It is indeed a theme most aptly crafted, but I thought I would have added the caveat, remembering the past. Ladies and gentlemen, those who know me personally know that I have a high regard for lawyers, regardless of their political persuasions or field of specialty. But of course, the highest regard is given to those who have been with me through my trials and tribulations. So let me take a brief moment to pay tribute to 3 dearly departed members of the legal fraternity. Let me seize this moment to state my enduring love, gratitude, and admiration for Raja Aziz Edrus, a genteel legal giant. Karpal Singh, a lion of lawyers. And lastly, my very dear friend, Christopher Fernando, a pillar of strength, and from Seremban, Tungku. Though no longer with us, they remain etched in my memory as quintessential lawyers. I am grateful to the Malaysian Bar, not only for inviting me today, Karen Chia, but for standing for these principles of justice, and I and my family is, of course, indebted to the Bar. Although your demands make my life rather difficult. Needless to say, it is such a great honor to be here amongst you. I was asked to give due consideration in my speech to the subject of judicial independence. But truth be told, that prompting is quite unnecessary, for I need no reminder about the imperative of such a topic, having been personally subjected to the toss and turns, the ups and downs, more down than up, of the wheels of justice. But what do we exactly mean by the term justice itself? Indeed, this is not an exact science, and the quest for exactitude in attempting to define it may well be an exercise in futility. However, to my mind, some guiding posts are helpful. Going through the expositions of the great philosophers, including Confucius and Plato and Immanuel Kant on the subject, reference to John Rawls' theory of justice as fairness may prove instructive. Indeed, it is here that being fair and impartial is one of the hallmarks of judicial independence. There's no need to reinvent the wheel here, but when we talk of the independence of the judiciary, it means that the judiciary shall decide matters before them impartially on the basis of facts and in accordance with the law, without restrictions, improper influences, inducements, pressures, threats, or interference. This is, of course, the language of the United Nations General Assembly. In other words, a judiciary that is independent, impartial, and competent is fundamental to the rule of law and engenders public confidence. We could well say that it is the very bulwark of justice itself. Now, this sounds easy on paper, but from the empirical standpoint, going back to certain years in the past, such independence may not be that evident, and in many ways, through no primary failing of the judiciary itself. Thanks to the blatant violation of the principle of separation of powers by those holding the reins of power not too long ago, we have witnessed the naked and brutal assault on the judiciary. This culminated in the emasculation of the judicial process itself, particularly in cases involving politicians who had posed a serious threat to the powers that be. Being held to ransom by the state personalities, certain judges consequently made judicial decisions which completely offended against our sense of justice and good conscience. Nevertheless, as I stand here today, and I can say with utmost certainty that since my taking office as Prime Minister, not only have I not encroached upon even a single inch of this sacred terrain, but I shall defend at all costs the independence of the judiciary. In this regard, I must commend our Chief Justice, Yang Amat Arif Tun Tengku Maimun, for a courageous role in strengthening our faith in the judiciary. Thank you, Tun. And by this, I mean that thanks to a steadfast stand on the independence of her judicial office and that of her judicial brethren, in the face of relentless attacks, the horizon of continued judicial independence appears bright and promising. Ladies and gentlemen, from the lessons of history, we know that it was corruption and bribery that constituted one of the primary causes of the collapse of the Roman Empire and subsequent empires as well. And it is not just the existence of corruption, but the scale and the long-term global effects that should concern all. Much has been said about my so-called preoccupation with the issue of corruption, and that not a day goes by without me shouting myself hoarse about waging war on corruption. While we have no empire as such, nevertheless, our nation's history is marred by abuse of power and corruption, no less. This scourge has permeated the fabric of our society. Smite our progress and national aspirations and undermines our foundations of good governance. In this regard, the time has come for a review of the Whistleblower Protection Act 2010 with a view to expanding protection and the avenues for disclosures to appropriate agencies without fear of punishment. In tandem with this, I would like to call on esteemed members of the legal fraternity to continue to support our initiatives to institutionalize good governance by advocating transparency and reinforcing our current efforts to hold to account the gross abuses of power and corrupt practices of those who had full control over the reins of power. No doubt, working on the present for the better of the future is essential, but equally imperative to bring to justice the perpetrators of corruption in the past. Giving them a free pass without accountability is to give a blank check for the perpetration of future abuses. We need to see a forceful demonstration of this fervor from the bar. This is the essence of democratic accountability. that we are not only accountable, but must be seen to be accountable as well. And this too is the affirmation of justice. In this regard, I'm reminded of His Royal Highness Sultan Azlan Shah, who upon his ascent to the throne in 1989 as the Yang di-Pertuan Agong made the pledge to rule Malaysia with utmost justice based on the laws and the constitution of the nation. To stand for justice and peace for the nation. With regard to the rule of law, it cannot be viewed purely from a prism of theoretical jurisprudence, for such a principle cannot be realized if the men in the street or those lacking the economic resources are unable to access the halls of justice. In this vein, I'm making reference to Karen Chia's appeal. I applaud the Malaysian Bar for their valiant efforts in providing legal aid via a scheme established more than 40 years ago. Working in tandem, the government established the Yayasan Bantuan Guaman Kebangsaan, and I'm glad to note that since the beginning of operation in 2012, the model has seen hundreds of thousands of persons be represented in criminal proceedings. And by my limited experience, not that limited, in Sungai Buloh, I've seen hundreds of prisoners being given the chance to defend themselves to get a reasonably fair trial. And therefore, I'm persuaded by Karen Chia to announce another increase of 10 million ringgit for this purpose. Because YBGK has become the largest provider of legal aid in the country. And thank you, because the government acknowledges the role of the Malaysian Bar in this initiative. I know I'm not going to get extra votes in the 6 states, but I can be rest assured there will be lots of dua in this place, from prison. To take the framework to the next level, I cannot furnish any specific details yet, but suffice to say that the government acknowledges that access to justice is a fundamental right, and therefore I will continue to engage, I think, through Ram Karpal, and give serious consideration to the views of the Malaysian Bar. And we can proceed from there, Karen Chia. But it's the only request you made as far as finances is concerned. Because if you extend beyond that, I have to consult the Minister of Finance. On the plight of stateless persons, the Home Ministry has received numerous citizenship requests under Article 15A of the Federal Constitution, which underscore the urgent need for action. Several critical issues contribute to the challenges faced by stateless persons in Malaysia. As for children born overseas to Malaysian mothers, efforts are already underway to resolving the issue of citizenship for them. We'll be able, inshallah, to table amendments to the Federal Constitution to replace the words "whose father." In Part 1 and Part 2, the second schedule of the words "at least one of the parents." Of course, by convention, we'll have to table to the Rulers' Council, and I believe this will be given support, and assuming that's done this month, we'll be able to table that bill in the next parliamentary session in September Ladies and gentlemen, as a nation, I believe we are at an inflection point in our path towards systemic reforms and a just and equitable society. There is much to do, but I'm grateful to have the opportunity to make this journey with my fellow citizens. I'm sure that the Malaysian Bar will be a vigilant and dependable companion in this odyssey. The IMLC provides a unique avenue for collaboration, dialogue, and the exchange of ideas. And as we gather here today, the global landscape is rapidly evolving, presenting new challenges and opportunities that demand our collective wisdom and concerted efforts. The issues faced require lawyers to not only be astute legal practitioners, but also compassionate agents of change, striving for justice, inclusivity, and sustainability. This is Malaysia Madani writ large. The legal profession is essential to the administration of justice and the facilitation of economic activity, comprising capable, diligent, and intelligent individuals with immense potential to contribute on a national and global level. It is my hope that Malaysian lawyers embark on this trajectory to elevate the legal profession and become a beacon for the region and the globe. In closing, I extend my sincere gratitude to all those who have worked tirelessly to make this conference a reality. Your dedication and efforts have created an exceptional platform to shape the future of the Malaysian legal landscape. May the next few days be filled with insightful discussions, fruitful collaborations, and meaningful interactions that leave an indelible impact on our collective quest for a more just, inclusive, and prosperous Malaysia. Terima kasih.
The Honourable Datuk Seri, we invite you to kindly take your seat on the stage and to be accompanied by Mr. Christopher Leong. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to the Q&A, please join me in another round of applause for the Honourable Datuk Seri Anwar bin Ibrahim, the Prime Minister of Malaysia.
Thank you very much, Yang Amat Berhormat Prime Minister. We come to a session, I think now, before Prime Minister attends his next event, an opportunity for a few questions that the bar could ask. And let me begin by saying, Prime Minister...
Difficult questions like the CJ deal. I deal with the simple political questions.
Yes. In fact, I'll just take a leave out of just what you just said about the importance of the independence of the judiciary.
experience that you have gone through, as you described, some of it I described, what would be your biggest takeaway in terms of, I want to say that you were there for the long haul, you know, you didn't give up, you persevered, as I said, you were steadfast, neither broken in spirit or mind, or you tried to do stuff with your body, but what is the takeaway from that?
Let's view some positive insight. I think best. Why don't you? You are referring to trials and tribulations. I'm thinking more love and affection. Aziza. Julie, that is the family. Even my understanding of Islam, there is no relevance or meaning to the religious dawah without rahmah and compassion. And I think that is why I don't have the bitterness. And I think you realize that we must chart a new future of this country. You must change the political landscape, which means effective reforms. But more than that, it's also understanding is how we disseminate the information. Our concern also has been that the narrative and the discourse here seems to be completely irrelevant to the masses. That's, of course, is concerning. How then do we engage and make sure that our concerns, also their concerns are our concerns. Otherwise, are we talking about judicial reform or independence and the rule of law? And next week I'm to Terengganu to say, you know, there's no issue about the Chinese taking over this country, or the Christians taking over this country. That's my concern. Not so much about the past, how then I don't think we should take it very seriously. Of course, it's being used as his last desperate attempt to be seen to be relevant. I'm going to make him irrelevant. I'm not going to comment on it. And I think we have to stay course to say this. I am a Malay. I respect the Malay culture, Malay tradition, Malay rulers, Malay language, but that should not make me a racist by denying the rights of others. I mean, how do you make sure that this country survives as a nation whilst protecting the rights of the Malays? You want to insist that it's purely a Malay country and deny the rights of others. I mean, saying this will be exploited. Tonight, us and the Satu speaker will say, look, Anwar at the Bar Council Conference say this is a non-Malay country. It does not matter. I think we will continue. I mean, I will use all the powers and resources that we have to deal with the situation and to respond. If we fail in this narrative, we fail in this discourse, we fail as a nation. But I think most of us, we all have to take that position. Yes, the Constitution is very clear on the position of the Malays. But the Constitution is also clear to protect the welfare of all citizens in this country. And the future is for all Malaysians. And I can't understand why in 2023 we are stuck with this. We are not talking about governance, we are not talking about economic advancement or digital technology. We are stuck about whose country belongs, this country belongs, to the Malays, to the Chinese, to the Christians. And worse, this corrupt coterie of leaders were those who have abused and enriched themselves, not the Malays. They are all billionaires. Their children are billionaires. They talk about Malay survival. I have challenged them. If it's true you want to have the Malays, then surrender half your wealth to the Malays.
I don't mind to hear that yeah, I was thinking, following on from what you said, do you think there's any traction, this playing up of racial sentiments, and if so, why? Is it because people are discontented at a very base level, as opposed to them, people are generally content, and they will have no room to entertain such?
To say that refers to education, civic education, understand the Constitution, understand our rights. That's why I think it is part of it. It is my responsibility to go down every week, go to universities and colleges and talk to them, and let them answer, ask any question they like. And because I think, as you said, it's not just economic, because among those who have strongly believe in so-called Malay supremacy, can be from the urban areas, intellectuals. They call themselves intellectual, I don't think they qualify. But then there is, of course, attraction, because of having no access to the facts and the failure of the elite, the urban and the professionals to address these issues to the villagers, and they're left to themselves, left to some of the religious scholars. I work with them. I was in Ibrahim, as you mentioned. I believe in Islam before. I believe in Dawah. I believe that Muslims should be better Muslims, practicing Muslims. But we have, for example, in Kedah recently, either you support us or you are the enemies of Allah. And that Nabi Adam landed in Gunung Jerai in Kedah. Such nonsense are being tolerated. Not one past leader came out to correct that statement. And there are hundreds of such statements. that Penang will be Christianized in 10 years, and that Anwar becomes Prime Minister, then the whole country becomes very liberal and secular, and school children will now start wearing skirts. I mean, some do believe, which means we have to be more effective. And I would only criticize them. I think also criticize our failure in trying to disseminate correct information, and we need to do more. Clearly, and you have to come and help.
Okay, just checking the time with the Prime Minister. So according to my Swatch watch, which I'm very proud of, Prime Minister has agreed to take 2 questions from the floor. What I would ask is that you raise your hands, and then when you are asked to ask your question, please identify, say your name, state your question. I think I will take 2 at one go so that the Prime Minister can go right through with the question. I think there's one behind Andrew and one gentleman in front. Okay. Do we have mics on the floor?
My name is Alvin Chow.
Albert, is it?
Alvin Chow. Better known as member of the Bangkok Bank family. I was formerly the chairman of Bangkok Bank, but I have a legal association with Allied Association. My congratulations to Ahmad Borman, Prime Minister, for giving a very good speech, especially like the part where you addressing the status of children born of Malaysian mothers overseas. I think that's a very great effort. My question is, I do have some regrets, so to speak, that, that things are in a way providing some obstacles to PMs achieving the goals of achieving this Malaysia Perdana, which I fully agree. I think one part which I think we have solution. I have solution looking at overseas experiences. Is that we can refute. There's no such thing that people around say that Malay students are naturally not smart. That is nonsense. Right? It's just a matter of solving this with the right methodology, looking at practices in Indonesia and Australia and elsewhere. I think with the right methodology, we can bring every Malay student, every single Malay student, up to the scale of what we might call Chinese students in private schools. And we have the educational, methodological technology to do that. And Prime Minister, I'm more than happy if you have your people or your Baharu to contact me. And I will provide the suggestion and solution to how Prime Minister can achieve closer to Malaysia Perdana by increasing, by addressing this problem that people keep harping. Of course, urban Malay students are better, but the problem is in the rural heart, Malay heart. We can bring the standards up. It's a matter of educational methodology. We are here willing to help, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, the Prime Minister has discerned the question, not to worry. Andrew, is it Andrew? Yes. Can you get a mic to Andrew right at the back?
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, Prime Minister. My name is Andrew Koo. I'm co-chair of the Constitutional Law Committee at the you've heard several speeches this morning extolling the virtues of the rule of law. There are many court cases which we've had in the past. So, even one involving yourself, where the courts have basically reiterated and reaffirmed that we live in a secular state. We are ruled by secular criminal law, and our constitution clearly shows that our executive, legislative, and judicial branches of government have no religious requirements or preconditions for membership. So constitutionally, we have secular governance. However, on January 6th this year, Prime Minister, you gave an interview to RTM where you said that secularism will never be recognized by the unity government. May I therefore know, what is your definition or understanding of the concept of secularism? And why is it that you say that secularism cannot be recognized by you or by the unity government that you lead? Thank you.
Thank you. The first question is on the issue of quality education or opportunities for Malay students. Now, I made reference to John Rawls, justice as fairness. Our responsibility to make sure there is access, democratization of access to quality education. You cannot expect a student in Manipuri to compete with the best schools in Kuala Lumpur. And expect, for example, coming from the college Kuala Lumpur, we will compete with the school, the Dayak school, Kapit in Sarawak. So our responsibility to make sure there is you democratize access to quality education. And I don't believe that this racial profiling is relevant. You give them the opportunities, let them compete. So I think, Albert, I correct that notion, because what is important, our responsibility is that you do that. Now, of course, we need to give opportunities to all the poor students, but that's why I'm saying I don't believe in profiling due to race. The poorest in this country are the Malays, but the poorest of the poor are the ethnic Indians. Now, how do you deal with it? Affirmative action, of course, will benefit the majority of the Malays. But affirmative action means that you have to deal with the poorest in our society. That includes the ethnic Indians. And that includes, of course, the issue of education. And that should be the primary task of this modern nation. Now, secularism. Andrew, you make my life difficult by asking this question. Prior to state elections, however, still I never get in trouble. If I say no to secularism, the legal fraternity is not happy. If I say yes, I will lose the elections. So, forgive me, Tona, I will give my view, my personal view, my understanding. Now, secularism, if it is laicite secularism, which completely cut off religion, religious practices and values, is of course not acceptable. Not only to me as a Muslim, but to all Muslims. Why do you accept laicity? I mean, religious values is important. When I talk values as integrating force, society and culture, a brilliant study by Dr. Ali Shabana, there must be better than some religious understanding. You better talk about forming justice. I think it is in the Friday sermon, without faith is in Allah ya'muru bil 'adl wal ihsan. You must ensure there is justice and ihsan virtue. Or it is, the statement is general, it's not only to Muslims. So I think, therefore, say that there is relevance. If you mean by secularism, it's not to discard completely religious values. It's acceptable. But if you take secularism, you must completely differentiate with religion. I think an issue. The philosophical construct or theoretical construct which require that the most secular society, even America, a very strong elitism, as opposed to France after the French Revolution, which takes this laïcité, which is a complete separation between state and religion. Now, does it mean therefore it is a religious state? No. Does it mean there must be a theocratic state? No. That's why the terms are being used freely, and we have to pay a price. So the general Muslim masses take secularism as something as anti-religion, and you want to popularize the term, fair, but you must make sure that that term is being understood clearly by the masses. Otherwise, there's complete disconnect between the narrative and the discourse of the urban ruling elite, elite and the sentiment and understanding of the masses. Now, let me reiterate this point, that the masses, the majority of Muslims, has been told clearly that secularism means complete separation of state and religion based on the influence and the experience of the Holy Roman Empire in European history. Now, that's not how a Muslim should understand. State has its secular elements, but the religious values must be embedded in that sort of understanding. Now, therefore, there is no contradiction. So once you start declaring Malaysia as a secular state, then they say, what about Islam and the religion of the Federation? What about Islamic departments? How do you reconcile the fact that a ruler, the Sultan, is the head of religion in the state? Now, for the Malay masses, they will say that you say you are completely secular as laicity. You say you are against the Sultan. You are against Islam as the religion federation. That's why when I say that we are not secular, I'm referring to that context. There's no issue of a complete separation of state and religion because Islam is the religion federation. But it is not a theocratic state that you impose Islamic laws upon everybody, including non-Malays or non-Muslims for the matter. Am I clear or I confused you further?
Thank you very much. I think it says that there's no absolutes. We deal with what we have and we thank the blessings for what we have. Prime Minister, sir, thank you very much for giving us your time, for giving us your thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Dr. Seri,
Kepada ayah ni, bawa ke jumpa Majlis Raya
Ini dalam dalam 1-2 hari.
Abang polis tepi.
Ayah hak pendengar itu hanya kepada bapa. Jadi tak termasuk ibu. Jadi kita nak masuk ibu bapa. Kalau dalam perlembagaan tak adil kalau kita hanya letak bapa dan tak masuk ibu. Jadi itu saja yang nak dikemukakan.
ke Majlis Raja itu bila?
Ini sesi dan 2 hari, 1-2 hari ni.
Sehari 2 hari ni.
Datuk Seri, how about the pushback against from civil society, even Tengku Mizran mentioned that there's one provision which the Home Ministry should not be removing because there's one provision which will cause more problems than resolving it.
Yeah, you know, once you introduce an amendment, there may be some implications on the other provisions. So that's the only issue. But I think the general consensus is that to confine only on the issue of parent, which include father and mother. And I don't think it should be a controversial issue. I don't understand how it was crafted much earlier, but it should not be an issue because even to the Malay and to general Malaysians, parent means ibu bapa. Okay? Sudah. Ya, tapi pemansuhan automatik mandatory, maknanya yang nak putuskan itu hakim. Bukan kalau undang-undang ni maknanya kalau dia ada dadah mesti hukum mati. Itu dia. Tak ada. Hukum itu masih ada. Hukum gantung masih ada, tapi tidak diputuskan dalam undang-undang automatik, tapi harus didengar oleh hakim. Saya ingat lebih adil.
Dia 10 million
ya. 10 juta itu peruntukan untuk orang-orang miskin yang tidak mampu membayar guam. Saya lihat ramai, umpamanya kadang-kadang kek kecil, tapi tidak ada peguam, tertangguh kerana tak dapat mempertahankan dan membela diri mereka. Jadi kerana saya tengok ramai sangat tidak dapat peluang peroleh bantuan guaman. Itu masih berat. Baik.
Aduh.